Are our mics live?
Yep.
Great.
Cool.
This is why you prepare things. I guess we did prepare a lot, but like, why is that the case?
Best episode yet.
This is so frustrating.
Tracy.
You don't need good advice. You've been ignoring good advice your whole life. Welcome to Shitty Life Advice.
Your toes look like stubby little week-old baby carrots.
You don't know any big words.
Nobody likes you. They never have.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 14 of Shit Advice. My name is Sam Lamont. Today's episode is on Sabotage. Can you kill the piano, Reese, please? We have a couple of things going on today. We have a special guest who might be joining us, may or may not, we'll see. And I'm also joined by two of my close friends, MC McDonald, author of Unbroken, and Tracy, who is the food blogging, art making, amazing Wonder Mom who owns Shutterbean.com.
I own it.
Welcome to episode 14, Sabotage.
Dun, dun, dun.
Sad moments. It is a hopefully comeback. Glasses are back on. My life has been a series of intense successes and intense failures. Almost like whenever I'm at a certain level of success or happiness or well-being, all of a sudden I break down. Mysteriously, sickness, ill health, ending relationships, and I, for one, am entirely tired of my propensity to sabotage myself. What is it about the human ape that has any reason to sabotage itself when things are going well? What the hell is going on that we destroy the very lives we work to build? My name is Sam Lamont. This is Shitty Life Advice. Welcome to our episode on Sabotage. Wow. Okay. So we tried to do a thing, but we'll take a better stab at it next week. Sorry about that. Today's episode is really exciting. There's a lot to pack in here. We're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, sabotage. I am King Sabotage. I forgot my crown. And we also forgot to promote the episode this morning. So whoever is here, congratulations.
Who sabotaged us?
Who sabotaged us? How terrible. Okay, well, we generally like to start the show with some grounding. There's a completely different grounding for this morning that Reese has whipped up, and I contributed. Here we go.
Hello, friend. How are you? You don't look well. Have you been listening to your higher self again? Have you been listening to your sweet desires, those poisonous, foul things that try to keep you up, when I only ask that you stay down? Well, you look like shit. My beautiful shit. Why?
I think we've heard enough.
You've heard enough of Mocha's?
Yes.
I think so. Yes. I am sufficiently ungrounded. Should we start by talking about what we're talking about when we are talking about sabotage?
Yeah.
Let's get on the same page.
Let's talk about it.
So the definition of the word sabotage is to destroy willingly or to bungle. And there's a really interesting little history with the word, which is that it comes from the root word for shoe, because this is probably false, story that the word originated when French workmen would actually throw their shoes into machinery to stop production. And that was their method of strike. And so they would sabotage production.
That sounds like self-sacrifice. I mean, shoes were not cheap.
That's true. They were made of wood.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Were they made of wood?
Yeah.
Good.
No.
They were. This was the story. And the wood, because not a regular rubber shoe wouldn't necessarily mess up a machine, a big factory machine, but a big clog.
So they were clog-wearing Frenchmen.
Clog-wearing Frenchmen.
Wow.
And that's
Okay.
why we have this word. I think it's also important to understand sabotage is a coping technique. We're going to talk all about sabotage and all of its roots, but success equals stress. And so stress can be experienced by the system as danger, and your system will respond by trying to keep you safe and small. So success requires accountability, growth, and change, and all of those things are scary. And so sabotage helps you cope with that stress by providing you with a trap door. Do we have examples that we want to work with? Are we saboteurs?
I'm a sabotager. There's lots of general examples for me. One of like my favorites is I get a little bit squirrely whenever relationships start going really well. That tends to be where all of a sudden I'm noticing some unacceptable behavior in them, and anything to avoid emotional intimacy.
Are you looking for something wrong? Is that what's happening?
Not initially.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you start when it's going well.
Yeah, like when it starts to go well is when I start to make hell. You know, that's my
Ooh.
yes. And also, mysteriously, whenever I make more than six figures, I tend to get mysteriously ill.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it starts in the body, which for the longest time meant that it was actually real, right? It was not depression. It was not something, but like I'm getting sick. I'm lethargic, without energy, and all of a sudden I lose whatever opportunity has afforded me somewhat the ability to pay my own way.
That is super common. And I want to say that, like, so it is real. When your system detects threat and you don't do anything about it, it will find a way to take you out. And sometimes that's illness, sometimes that's pain, sometimes that's behavioral. There are a lot of different ways to do it. I have an exercise we'll talk about. Stay tuned at the end of the episode in the prescription segment that might help.
Okay, do you have any sabotaging tendencies?
I'm not a huge sabotager, and
Congratulations.
I say that knowing that there are probably sneaky unconscious ways that I might be sabotaging and not realizing it. I was thinking about this kind of all last night. What are the sneaky ways that I am sabotaging and not aware of. One way that I do sabotage is overworking and then revenge procrastination, which looks like staying up super late when I have something important to do in the morning. I had to record a podcast this morning. I stayed up really late, answering emails that really were not urgent and watching TikTok. That's my...
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
I don't like to sabotage things either.
Yeah.
But I've realized that there's something that I do or did. I'm working through it. It has to do with weighing myself.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so for, I would say probably like a good 5 years, I was losing and gaining the same 5 pounds. Because I would get on the scale and then lose weight and then be like, oh, cool, I have license to eat today. I don't do that anymore.
Oh, that's great.
So it feels liberating to not do that. But yeah, I was sabotaging my weight loss forever. So that's how I do it.
Keeping yourself...
I also procrastinate too. I wait till the last minute and then let that fuel my my motivation to get things done.
Because there's urgency.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah. Again, also super common. I'm already worried about everything, so I don't need the extra energy of procrastination. I like to be early prepared.
Speaking of sabotage, make sure to stay close to your microphone so everyone can hear you.
You guys,
Okay.
it's hard.
I know.
Because,
We have a different setup today. Speaking of which, we have
We're learning.
changed 7 things in this episode. If you can spot any of them, please comment below.
Dun, dun, dun.
I think it's
7.
a fun game to
7.
play if you're watching the
Wait.
show week by week. We try to improve things. Anyway, today's show is a special one for me because I stand the most to gain. This behavior of sabotage really racks my brain. Why is it that we participate in our own destruction? It doesn't make sense to the conscious mind, but I think as I am coming to learn, we're a little bit more than just the conscious mind. At some point, we have a special guest. Is he here? Not yet? Okay. So here's the deal. We got 11 viewers right now and not 11 likes. So if you could, please, we have 1 like.
Like.
I'll join. Boop.
Oh,
2
I can
likes.
like us.
Oh, I can like it.
So please remember to like the video. The higher that ratio is, the more YouTube thinks this show is worthwhile. Anyway, we have a couple of things we could do in the meantime. We have the user submitted questions, or we have the user submitted voice memos. Which one should we start with?
Maybe a voice memo. Ooh.
Oh,
What is that?
that might be our special guest.
Ooh. Hello.
Hello. How are you, Gay?
Can you hear us?
This is the first time we've done a guest this way, but I'll jump in. Gay Hendricks is a psychologist. He is part of an amazing power couple, Katie and Gay Hendricks. They wrote a book that I have read and loved, Conscious Loving, but this is the first book that got me into Gay's work called The Big Leap, which is billed as a book to help you achieve your dreams, and then Tricky sneaks you into the root of the problem, which is why you sabotage yourself. It's one of the greatest bait and switches I've ever had in the self-help category. It's like, we're going to talk about building your life up, and then you get into the book and it's like, hey, here's what's really going on.
So good.
Yeah.
I've never heard it described as a bait and switch. I really love that.
Yeah, so Gay, could you tell us about your concept of the upper limit problem and how it factors into the human experience? Like, why are people willingly setting themselves backwards? It makes no sense.
Yes, well, human beings have been used to dealing with adversity for millions of years. You know, we have hundreds of thousands of nerve endings on the bottom of our foot, for example, that's there to register pain because for millions of years people walked around without shoes on. What we haven't had is good training in how to let yourself feel good for any long period of time. If you notice throughout history, there'll be a period of peace, and then everybody says, got to go to war. Mm-hmm. And then everybody takes 100 years to recover from that, and we have a little bit of peace, and then go to war again. So we all have these things built into us that are basically because we don't know how to tolerate things going well for long periods of time. So I started noticing this in my own life way back in my 20s. Well, the very first time I noticed it, actually, I was obese at the time, and I was trying to lose some weight. And the first month, I switched my diet completely. I was 24 years old, and I had grown up eating basically junk food. And for me, a lunch was a cheeseburger, some fries, and a vanilla malt. That was like the ultimate lunch for me. And as a result, I was swole, as they say. And so that's different from woke. And so I went on this diet where I started eating only foods I'd never eaten before. Things like, get ready for this concept, fruits and vegetables.
Ooh, wild.
And so the first month I lost 35 pounds, more than a pound a day.
Oh, wow.
And I was feeling like, oh man, I felt greater than I'd felt in ages. And I was walking down the street in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I walked past an ice cream store. And I saw this family in there eating an ice cream sundae, this gigantic thing with bananas and everything. And I went unconscious. And I just went in there and I ordered one. And for the next 20 minutes or so, I felt high as a kite from all that sugar. But then after that, I got the worst stomach ache of my life. And I was actually doubled over out on the sidewalk. And people were saying, "Are you okay, sir?" But that's the upper limit problem. You have a period of good feeling. You don't know how to deal with that. And then up comes old unconscious programming, a main bit of unconscious programming, which is you don't deserve to feel good for very long. And I don't know if you ever heard this when you were a kid, but like there were all these sayings, like they were basically the only thing worse than getting what you want is, or the only thing, what is it? The only thing worse than getting what you want is getting what you want, is the basic idea that it's not such a good idea to have what you want because then it turns bad. Or pride goes before a fall. So there was all these concepts of upper limits built into the language. And I think people just unconsciously pick up on that. And so the upper limit problem is your tendency to sabotage yourself when things are going well. And what the Big Leap is all about, of course, is how that works and what you can do about it, and how you can take steps that actually dissolve that.
What amazes me is that wisdom is not enough. Like you can know that you have a tendency to sabotage. I think wisdom is the start of the process, but you can still engage. For instance, I am so programmed now that anytime I'm in any kind of romantic issue, I go straight to Jack in the Box, order 3,000 calories of fried food, and just self-flagellate in some sort of way, which is, of course, not conducive to helping the relationship problem. So,
right, munchie meal.
Gay, when you're approaching this, what is the action plan that you tend to work on with getting people to actually make a change? I heard a great quote last year, which was, "You're always growing, so if you happen to be the same, that meant that you grew into the same person again."
Oh, wow.
Right? And that we are constantly capable of growth and change, but we have a desire for homeostasis or a desire for things to stay the same. So we are renewing as we grow, renewing into the same thing over and over again. But two things can be true. One, I think that we have an existential desire to grow and change, which is why people are interested in self-help. And two, we are also built for struggle in some way as humans. Like you said, there is some kind of pull. If you make it so you don't have to fetch water every day, or you don't have to chop wood for heat, or you get rid of all these problems, like we are living like modern day kings and queens, it would take dozens of servants to provide the life that we have, just to get a hot shower in the morning and clean water that doesn't make you sick.
Yeah. Plus, you have to argue with there are always forces arguing against change, too. I remember reading in history there was this gigantic uproar in London when the new motor cars came out because all the people whose jobs it was to shovel up horse manure every day out of the streets were mad about having their jobs threatened. And so there's this tremendous tendency to pull back into the familiar and the known. And so I think that one of the things that I found underlying the upper limit problems were limiting beliefs like, I don't deserve the good things of life. That's one of the big ones. One of the biggest barriers is what I call the false limiting belief that I don't deserve love, positive energy, abundance, and the good things of life for some reason. I'm fundamentally flawed is the unconscious thought. I'm fundamentally flawed in some way, so therefore I don't deserve love or positive energy. And that's probably the biggest barrier that I run across. And interestingly enough, I've run across it. I started out working with juvenile delinquents in my career 50 years ago. Now I live near 60 miles away from Hollywood, so I work with a lot of entertainment figures and people like that. And it's all the same. We've all got that same issue a lot of times. Do we deserve the good things of life? And so I'm here to say, yeah, you do. No matter where you've been or what you've done, go ahead. This is the only moment that matters is right now. And so when people come here, one of the things that we're up to is helping them identify their limiting beliefs, and particularly identify the fears that are under the limiting beliefs. Like, the fear that I'm fundamentally flawed is a big fear that a lot of people wrestle with. Or another big one, especially in our field, where people are wanting to learn and better themselves and have good, useful information. One of the biggest things I found is a lot of us have a program that's a fear of outshining other people. Yeah. We're afraid a lot of times of letting ourselves really, show our genius in the world for fear it will make somebody else look bad or take it away from somebody who needs it more, take the energy away from somebody that we think needs it more. But, I think that all these things are products of our past conditioning. And this moment now is completely fresh and open and is the greatest place to make a new declaration that you're here to honor your genius. You're here to celebrate your unique abilities in the world. And part of that involves getting out from under those old fears that, I don't deserve this or somebody else deserves it more.
Mm-hmm. One of the parts that strikes me is in my sabotage, it generally feels like it's not a product of the mind. It generally feels like, oh, I really am losing steam, or my energy is really going down, or I really do need a break. And believe me, I'm all for taking healthy amounts of breaks, but I've noticed that whenever I'm doing fantastically, all of a sudden it's like my body is not cooperating. So when somebody finds themselves in that, right, because it's one thing to feel like, oh, well, this is just in my head, but when it's not just in your head, where do you start to, is that still going back to beliefs, or what is the right way to start addressing that as it's coming up, as you're maybe at your stretch point where you're getting just past your upper limit?
Great question. Well, a key thing when you find yourself in that kind of situation is to recommit. Make your vow again to what you're really here for. Like for me, as you probably saw in The Big Leap, my life purpose is to expand every day myself in love, positive energy, abundance, and creativity while I inspire other people to do the same. So 50 years ago, that's what I figured out I wanted to do with my life. And here 50 years later, I'm still happily doing it and hope to continue doing it. Like you, I probably wanted to create a job I never wanted to retire from. And so I made that dream come true. But the thing is, what to do? Remake your commitment to bringing forth your genius. And I say remake it because at some place you probably made a commitment to developing your unique abilities and then you wandered off track a little bit. So recommitment is the place to come back to, because like I use the example all the time with my students of the automatic pilot, that it's always being wrong in the sense that it drifts to the right and the automatic pilot says go back to the left, and it drifts to the left and it says go back to the right. And so it gets from Los Angeles to Hawaii by being wrong most of the time because it's willing to recommit and recommit and recommit. And so everybody is going to blow it from time to time, like I did with my ice cream sundae that day. That made such an impact on me. It was a long time before I ever did something like that again, though. All you need is one terrible stomach ache to teach you a lesson that your mind has been trying to learn for 24 years. Yeah, Sam, you mentioned the difference between the mind and the body. The problems are always old programming that's lodged in our bodies. And that's why we say around here, fear is excitement without the breath. When you get into fear, breathe with it. Don't shrink from it. Don't hide from it. Open up to it. Breathe with it. Be with it. Feel it turn into excitement about what you can do with this moment. Fears always are in reference to the past or the future. You know that we're scared of fantasies we make up in the future, and we're also scared about things that have happened to us in the past. But in this moment, in this present, there is only excitement, and excitement that can be applied to what you most love to do. That's the big question we ask people when they come here to work with us is, what is it that you most love to do? What is it that you could spend all day doing without getting tired because it serves your highest purpose and what you're really here for? This happens to be mine, but everybody's got one like that. For me, like I start my day usually around 4:30. That's when I just organically wake up. I don't have a alarm clock or anything, but I wake up around 4:30. And so from about 5 or 5:30 to 7:30 or 8, when my wife wakes up, I'm writing and I'm doing things that I really love to write about. And then for the rest of the day, I'm doing things like this that I really love to do. It just so happens that I had an hour today that I had blocked off because I'm supposed to go get my teeth cleaned. And then they called up and moved my teeth cleaning appointment. So I got spared.
Do you ever run into folks who feel like they just can't get in touch with the thing that they love or have resistance around that? Because that seems like a sneaky way that sabotage would come in too, where you're just like, I don't know what I love. I don't love anything. I don't have a purpose, that kind of thing.
I run into people like that all the time. And I'll tell you, oddly enough, where I often run into them, surprisingly, is at places where I give a speech like for the Young Presidents Organization. And these are all people that I think they have to have a business with 50 employees or something. Mm-hmm. They're going places. They're upwardly mobile. They're in their 30s, 40s, and they're going places. In fact, I think you can't be over 50 and be in this particular organization. But anyway, go there sometime and try to tell them to do things they love to do more. Yeah. I mean, you'll actually get people standing up in the audience and saying, that's crazy. If I'm going to wait till I'm 65, then I'll get to do what I most love to do.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I'm working my tail off. I feel so sorry for that point of view because, to me, I go on vacation sometime, but I never really need a vacation because I take my vacation every day. I mean, every day that you're doing what you love to do is a vacation, in my opinion, given that 99.9% of people on planet Earth are really not having the opportunity, or if they do have the opportunity, they're not taking the opportunity to do that. And so if you've got even a breath or a prayer of doing things you love to do, I mean, that's to me the sweetest thing on earth. And especially like Katie and I have been together 43 years now. And so we started working together from the very beginning. And so imagine 43 years of working with your partner. It's a tremendous opportunity to create a living example of what you're most interested in doing here on this planet.
I love that. I love there's so much dire research about folks who retire. They do that like you're describing of the young presidents. Folks, they retire, they wait until they're 65, they retire, and then their health immediately plummets, and sometimes to the point of death, because they're not plugged in with anything that has meaning for them, and they're at a complete loss because they've spent 65 years with their just working absolutely nonstop. It's scary.
I had a personal experience that it brings up a great deal of sadness in me because my favorite aunt growing up, Lyndall, she was a school teacher, but she never really liked it. And she spent 30 years being a school teacher because they had such great benefits, and they had early retirement. But to go through 30 years of doing something she hated every day, she picked up the habit of drinking a bottle of vodka in the evening. And by the time she got to be 60 and retired, she was basically a wreck. And she lived a couple of years past 60, but she never got to have that thing that she was working for. It was very heartbreaking. I never like to see anybody do anything for any length of time that they don't love to do, because, sometimes if you're, strapped for cash, you got to do things that, whatever it is. I started off my grand career out of high school working as a furniture mover for 50 cents an hour. And then after 2 weeks of this backbreaking work, I got a raise to 75 cents an hour. And then a buddy of my mom's offered me a job at the Gulf station pumping gas for $1 an hour, man. And I thought that was it. And, but, no matter where you start, you're probably going to have to do some things along the way. Like, I can't say that pumping gas was in my genius zone, but it got me to a place later on where I could figure out what my genius zone actually was.
So, Gay, we asked our audience for some feedback on how they sabotage. We'd love to have you on the line as we go through a couple and just chit-chat, see if we recognize ourselves in any of these. And I am prepared to give some very shitty advice on these.
Oh, good.
Take us away, Tracy.
All right, here's a comment. I lose weight, and when I get compliments, I stop and regress back to my old ways.
Yes. Well, that is very, very common. And I've worked with probably more than 100,000 people in my career about weight loss. And you wouldn't be surprised how many people get triggered the first time people said, wow, have you lost some weight? And a lot of people, interestingly enough, I've analyzed that moment. A lot of people lie in that moment.
Wow.
They may say, oh, I'm just, maybe eating a little bit less or something, but they don't take the compliment. So here's what we do with it in our seminars. We have people stand up next to a partner and just take one positive compliment after another and stay in their body while they're doing it by breathing. So keep your mouth closed. Let somebody just appreciate you 10 times in a row and keep breathing and letting that in. In other words, break that little habit of coming to your own rescue and saying, oh, no, and get the habit of letting positive energy in, breathing it in, taking it in, giving it back, but letting yourself participate fully with it.
The reason you are not taking compliments is because secretly, deep down, you know that this is only temporary, and once again, you will return to the slobby slob you are. That's my
terrible advice. Terrible. Did you ever see? This reminds me of something. Did you ever see the King of the Hill episode where Hank Hill was instructing his niece? What's her name? Luann, I think. She's kind of an airhead. He's instructing her on how to deal with her feelings. And it's look it up sometime, but here's the basic thing that happens. Her boyfriend is being mean to her and she's feeling bad. And she's saying, Uncle Hank, what can I do with these feelings? And he says, okay, I'll show you. He says, figure out where they are in your body and then stuff them down even farther than that.
Relatable.
She says, Uncle Hank, that hurts. That feels terrible. And he says, that's the one you really got to stuff down.
That's amazing. I love that.
They're both back in the kitchen with a half gallon of ice cream, eating ice cream.
All right, Tracy, what else you got?
Okay, so I procrastinate so much that I don't get things done sometimes. So let's talk about procrastination. It came up a lot.
Okay, now you want some bad advice or good advice?
Both.
Oh, start with the bad advice.
Okay. Procrastination. It comes from a set of Latin words that means to not do something now and do it later. Okay? So my bad advice is just imagine you're a Roman. Channel your old Roman and think of it as a Latin phrase that means nothing to you now.
Channel a Roman. Okay, I'm writing this down.
I do that whenever I can.
Yeah.
Channel a Roman.
Is somebody feeding me grapes and fanning me with a palm frond?
Of course.
The words mean nothing to you now.
Okay. Continue. Sorry.
Gay, how do you approach procrastination when somebody is really good at what they're doing, but for some reason unable to make time for it, or they really love what they're doing, but are having a hard time to sit down and do it?
Yes. Well, I like to help people figure out what their 5 biggest priorities in life. I think every human being has the power to do 5 big things in their life. And that's just, I've been working with people, I've worked with 20,000 people, so I'm not basing that on a theory. I'm just saying basically people I see very able to do, they get a degree from Harvard. Let's say they get their medical degree and they have a family. And then they decide to write a book, and that's great. And then they decide to do something. So 5 things I think people have energy to do. If you haven't figured out what your 5 are yet, sit down right away. Once I did it, it took me probably an hour to figure out my big 5. My big 5 was, number 1, I wanted to create a relationship with a woman with whom I could grow and love and change over the years. Mm-hmm. And at the time I was 33, I think, and I hadn't ever found anybody like that. Most of my relationships, I say now, looking back on them, they had the trajectory of the Titanic. They would start off with great fanfare and then hit an iceberg after a little while and sink. Usually in my case, it was like 6 months. I don't know, I had some kind of 6-month spell, but things would go well. Anyway, I wanted to create a loving, long-lasting relationship. And this was, interestingly enough, just when I was about to get together with Katie. The second thing I wanted to create was I wanted to live in a space of, I wanted to clear incompletion out of my life and live in a space of completion where there was nothing I hadn't said to the important people in my life, nothing I hadn't listened to. So I felt complete in each moment. And that took me a lot of work because when I first hatched that idea, I didn't have that. I was, had a lot of incomplete conversations in my life going back to when I was a kid even. And the third thing I wanted was to learn how to write from my heart. At the time, I published a textbook and I published any number of scientific articles in psychology, even in big ones in the big publications and things. But I hadn't really done anything that was from my own heart. And that was my big leap, I think, was to start writing books, starting with my first one way back there, Learning to Love Yourself, which was really coming from inside me. It was about my experience and my experience of working with people. It wasn't a recitation of the research done on the subject because there wasn't any at the time. But I'm happy to say that book, Learning to Love Yourself, which came out basically 50 years ago, it still sells like hotcakes every month. And so it touches on something that I think everybody needs to know about, which is to create a space of loving acceptance in yourself. The fourth thing I wanted, my fourth big wish for my life, was that I wanted to create some kind of relationship with the creator force in the universe. I didn't have a really good experience with religion when I was a kid. I grew up in the deep South, so the kind of religion you get down there is, it's filtered through a lot of layers of unconsciousness, let's put it that way. And so I'd never really gotten connected to it in a big way. But I wanted to have some kind of experience of spirit and soul and universal connection. So that was my fourth. And my fifth was simply to learn to savor each moment as it was, rather than wanting to be somewhere else or thinking about something from the past, to just be here, the popular phrase, be here now. Well, that's actually a really good goal, because that's where all the good stuff happens. It doesn't happen when you're thinking about the past or the future.
I love these so much. Can I ask you a question about worry? Because I know this is a big part of your work. When you feel like you've completed one of these tasks, and I'm thinking in particular of, you said you wanted to learn how to write from the heart, and then you did that. Do you start to worry about being done, or worry about, oh no, how am I going to fill in? Now I only have 4 things, or no?
I've never had a dull moment since I figured out those. Never a dull moment. Like the number 2 one, living in completion, it took me a couple of years to get that, like I had to do some detective work. I found I had to locate a guy I owed $160 to. And so it took me a while to kind of track him down and to pay him off and everything. So that went back years. And I had a magical experience. So it doesn't all have to be negative stuff. There was this man that I heard a speech named, when I was in the 10th grade, he was named J. Wallace Hamilton. And he gave this speech that was the most radical thing. It was about following your own dreams, basically, not getting caught up in the suburban mythology of the time, which was in the 1950s. He said, people are going to try to sell you the big life insurance policy, and they want you to buy the biggest refrigerator and live in the biggest house, even if you can't afford it. And he said, beware of all that, because it can have the effect of taking you away from who you really are and what you really want to do with your life. And I remember hearing that when I was in the 10th grade and saying, wow, that makes sense to me. And so I tracked him down. He had passed away many years before, but his widow, his 83-year-old widow, I tracked her down, and I had the experience of telling her how much her husband had changed my life.
Oh,
and
wow.
You should have seen her. It was just like, it definitely made her day. And I got this wonderful letter from her telling me how, she was at the end of her life and wondered, had anybody ever benefited from anything, and suddenly here comes my letter in, and it was just a beautiful experience. So anyway, I urge everybody to figure out what your big 5 is and get busy making them come true. By the way, worry is an upper limit problem. Worry is something we do to bring ourselves down. You'll be feeling good, and then all of a sudden you'll think, oh gosh, I'm feeling good, but what about cousin Ned? He spent Saturday night in the drunk tank, and next you be busy fixing cousin Fred and forgetting that 10 seconds before you were feeling fabulous. So 99% worry is upper limit problems. Unless a predator is chasing you, don't bother to worry very much. We were talking before you came on about what our sabotage methods were, and I was saying I don't really think that I'm a sabotager, but I am a professional 24/7 worrier. So
Yeah, you are.
you know it.
They say that worrying is like praying for something bad to happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a lot of my worry is, I've focused on that a lot, though. I come from a family of very negative thinkers. Even to this day, my brother, who's 7 years older than I am, if I talk to him about something positive, like, oh, hey, I got a new book coming out next month, and he said, oh, you're not going to have to go out on tour again, are you? Oh, God. It's always something terrible that's going to happen to me as a result of writing a book. Once I'd like to hear him say, congratulations, but that's not in his wheelhouse. Hey, listen, gang, I've enjoyed talking to you, and I have to jump now. My wife is going to serve me a fabulous lunch here in addition to being
Can I ask you one more thing before you leave?
Chef.
Can you repeat your ultimate success mantra for us again? I love it.
Yeah. The idea is that I expand in love, abundance, success, creative energy, as I go about inspiring other people to do the same. To me, a good life purpose needs to have contribution. It needs to be partly what you love and partly what your biggest contribution is. To me, that is the genius zone.
Thank you for your time,
Thank
Gay.
you.
It's such a pleasure to get to know you a little bit more each time. Thanks for being a part of this experimental news show. Gay Hendricks is the author of The Big Leap, as well as Conscious Loving, if you'd like to experience Gay and Katie together in their power coupledom. And Gay, where's a great place to stay in touch with your work and hopefully read the new book I think you should write, which is Living in Completion?
Yes.
Well, as a matter of fact, let me put in a plug for my new book, which I just turned in. It'll be out at before Christmas.
Congratulations.
It's basically a 365 days of big leaps.
Ooh.
Oh, great.
And so, and it's got lots of other stuff in it too, but like bonus leaps and things like that. But imagine 365 days, each with a little suggestion that anchors you more in your genius.
Ooh, I love it. I love it.
I love daily readers. I do 3 in the morning every single day. I can't wait to do 4. Thank you, Gay.
When I get a copy, I'll send you guys one. The best place to get in touch with us is our main website, hendricks.com, HENDRICKS.com. We also have a nonprofit foundation website that has a lot of free resources. I sent you one of the links, I think, to one of those where I'm talking about what the upper limit problem is and how to deal with it. But at the Foundation for Conscious Living website, we have a lot of free videos about relationship tools and things like that. So a lot of good stuff there that we've put together over the past 50 years.
Thank you, Gay. Enjoy your lunch.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Blessings to you. Bye.
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 Sam, you also recorded a podcast with Gay.
Yes.
I did record a podcast with Gay.
It's amazing.
It's
And-
episode 61.
Wow.
I looked it up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
You can find that anywhere you find podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Outcast, anything you want. It's not called Outcast. What is that thing called? Overcast. Outcast is a band.
So 2 of our listeners have sent in voice memos.
Ooh.
Yeah, this is the first time hearing a couple people's voices who
How
have
fun.
reached out to me before. So, Reese, could we start with the, I think it's called like, and now I'm smoking meth? That is coming right up.
He was so lovely.
He is seriously a fantastic human.
Hi, Sam and Gay and anyone else who's there. The way of self-sabotaging that is my personal brand is when things are going well outwardly in my life, like getting a promotion or having a good relationship or something like that, I tend to suddenly start making excuses for substance use that isn't in my normal, or like break some level of sobriety that I thought I was past suddenly, and in small ways, like, oh, I'm gonna go out and party with my friends more because I'm having so much success. And then suddenly when I'm partying with my friends more, I use more substances. And then when I use more substances, things start to fall apart, as they tend to do. So I feel like my way of self-sabotaging tends to be like making excuses for, or making it okay in my brain temporarily that it's okay that I'm trying something or experimenting with something, and then suddenly experimenting becomes problematic really quickly. And I tend to really only do that or be interested in doing that when I'm having success in another area. Like right now, I just purchased a home and I'm like so excited about that. But I also have been using substances in ways that I thought I was past. And so, I don't really know how to get past this little bump because I can, I know I can get sober because I've done it a million times, but why do I have to keep doing it a million times? Like, and the only reason I start using substances again or using substances in small ways that suddenly lead back into, oh, I'm doing meth. Like, it just goes so fast.
Mogazar has entered
would
the
love some
building.
support with that. Thank you. You guys are great.
You do not need to get over this bump. You need to do more bumps. Although you should probably not snort meth. You should smoke meth at all times. I'm not one of the IV guys either.
Can you snort?
Those people are freaks. You can snort meth, and I would not recommend it. It keeps you up for even longer, and it burns like hell.
I bet.
Yep.
Ouch.
I think it's really interesting the way that that success requires accountability, and I think this person is taking themselves out because we have this model in society that like you climb a mountain and then you're at the top, and then you and then you what? Celebrate? We don't talk about, we just say that's supposed to be a good thing. But what often happens is that you get to the top and then there's another mountain to climb because you've just climbed a mountain. And so now you're sort of called to the mat and there's all these expectations of you. And so it seems like maybe this caller is sort of using substances to take themselves out because they're being called to accountability. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah. All right, Reese, can we play the next one, which is Heather's Bad Men?
Hi, I'm Heather. I self-sabotage by choosing men that are either emotionally or physically unavailable. This is the direct result of getting involved with someone after my 17-year marriage ended and my dad died. I was in a pretty vulnerable place. My ex-husband was my first and only everything, and I just was not very wise about these sort of things. We had met through a mutual friend on Facebook. He had reached out to me and was in the process of the end of his own marriage and wanted to know, at the time I was still a Christian, wanted to know if I had suffered any, adverse effects being involved in the church and getting a divorce and just kind of basically how to navigate that whole thing. And that's how it started. Eventually it evolved, and the next thing I know, I was falling pretty hard for this man, and he had established a rapport with my daughter, and some friends of mine had told them that he was going to marry me, just all kinds of, it was just really intense. I had booked a ticket to fly out to Oregon to see him, and about 2 weeks before I was supposed to go, he told me that he needed some space, let him be for a while, and I never really heard from him again. That kind of fucks your head up a little bit. And so as a result of that, I subconsciously choose, well, now not subconsciously, but definitely very consciously am aware that I choose these men in the hopes that they will move heaven and earth to be with me and fight for me and choose me. That's how I self-sabotage.
Wanting men to move heaven and earth and to choose you is such a beautiful thought. And just like Sisyphus climbing up the mountain, you will never stay there. Heather, not only will you never, ever not date an unavailable man, I got news for you, sister. Those men were not unavailable before they met you. Meeting you has made them unavailable to love because you, Heather, are unlovable.
No. False. We don't like that. I used to. What?
No?
No. I used to work. There's some like little secret answers in Heather's voice memo, and we can use those, and we can help you, Heather. I used to work with previously incarcerated folks, and who were trying to get kind of on their footing after incarceration, and they used to call me at all hours of the night with questions. And one time, one of them called me and said, "Why are death and sex so wrapped up?" And it was like 2 a.m. There's no hello. It's just like into the question. And I said, because sex is the biggest fuck you we can throw at death. And I like that sentence that I said at 2 a.m. And I think what the sneaky thing that's happening in your life is that you've had this huge loss. And loss makes us acutely aware of our radical vulnerability. A super convenient way to evade that vulnerability is to fall in love with people who are unavailable, because those relationships are doomed. And there's so much drama, which is a great distraction, which also distracts you from the grief and the loss. And so I think that's what's going on here, and that's why you are attracted to these people. Our pathology comes out in our attraction, and we need to pay more attention to that.
So what does it mean does it mean that you are, if you end up with a similar type, that you have some issue?
Yeah. Something to be worked on. It's an indicator light, like an indicator light in your car, that like something needs work. You got to open the hood and figure out what it is. I don't know why I just started a car metaphor, but here we are.
This is I'm here for it. We love car metaphors in this.
Check the oil.
Yeah.
Lube.
Tracy, do we have any other great cards that we want to go over that you thought were good conversation starters?
I think this one's interesting. I book fitness classes, then bail, costing me workout time, money, and self-respect.
Oh, wow.
Just like reading a recipe will nourish you, you can also book classes and learn the skill you'd like to learn.
That's how I stay motivated. It's like the money and the potential loss of that money is like the motivation for me to work out in the first place.
So the person, this is interesting. This person's at war with themselves because they're trying to keep themselves accountable by having the money and the accountability of having to be in a certain space at a certain time, and then they're still taking themselves out. So there's something underneath there that's trying to still keep you small. What are you afraid of? And could you do classes not in person? Because this is total speculation. I'm just guessing, but
I don't do them if they're not
at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. But I wonder if you're not comfortable in person, so you're taking yourself out.
You don't do them if they're not?
I do them at home. Yes. Mm-hmm. If I book it, then I have to do it. Mm-hmm. So like if I book an in-person class, then I'm going.
Yeah,
in person. Mm-hmm. But digital is easier to ignore.
I don't though, do you?
I can do it. I mean, you mean like if I sign up for something digitally? And then have I done that? No, I haven't bailed out.
I bail.
Money is a big motivator.
If I sign up, I will go. In person, online, whatever.
No,
I
sympathize with this person. I do that.
Oh.
Yeah. What's next?
Let's see. Well, revenge bedtime.
Yeah. This is me.
Yeah.
This is a thing. This is really common, and I think a lot of people don't know about it. If you are staying up super late and you're not sure why, like you have every intention to go to bed early because you know you have something important to do tomorrow and you're staying up really late, it's because you're not getting enough of a break in the day. So try to like reverse engineer, if you can, some space during the day when you're doing the stuff that you're doing at 2:00 in the morning.
Note to self.
It's hard. It's hard.
That's what she said. I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we got
coming up. Can we talk
up
about sabotage as identity?
Yes, please.
Because, and this is going to tie into the prescription, which we can get to, but I think that as with many of the pathologies, or as with many of the patterns that we have with pathology, we identify as someone who sabotages. And once we identify as someone who sabotages in a certain way, we fuse ourselves with that behavior and we trick ourselves into believing there's nothing we can do about it. And I feel like even the language we've been using today has all been like, I am a sabotager, this is how I do this. And if you look at just the way that we're structuring those sentences, we're really like locking ourselves in. Like what you said about relationships and sabotaging relationships was all like, there's no room in the way that you talk about that. It's like, this is what I do, this is who I am. And our brains are listening. So we are going to continue to behave like that if we continue speaking like that.
It reminds me of an episode I did with Artie Sequeira.
Yeah. I love her.
And she said,
Party.
Artie Party, and she said, "Oh, I don't have depression. I am experiencing depression, or that's not mine." Like she would not own it.
Yes, it's not who I am. Yeah. And I think we call it. So pay attention to what you're saying. If you are saying, "I am a revenge procrastinator," can you make a tiny little shift and say, "I find myself staying up too late sometimes. I tend to do this when I'm really stressed out," because even just that little reframe gives you a little bit more of space to change your behavior.
Anything else you want to get to before we do prescriptions?
I don't think so. Do you?
Okay, take us away. What's our prescription?
Okay, so
he's going to play your little thing.
Oh, no, he's not.
He's not.
That's totally fine. I'm going to send this in the newsletter, so please sign up for the newsletter. We'll tell you about that right before we wrap. I want you to know that you are not your behaviors. So stop telling yourself that you are your behaviors. Every time you do that, you make positive change less.
Somebody call a doctor.
She's here.
Here's your prescription. Fucking change is fucking possible, but you have to suspend your fucking disbelief for long enough to try. Yeah? So The exercise that I want you to try this week comes to us from dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, chain analysis. When we have behaviors that are frequent and they kind of become second nature, habitual, we make the mistake of thinking they are fixed and totally out of our control. We are wrong. This exercise, a chain analysis, lets you put a microscope up to your behavior and figure out what components are actually contributing to it. So basically, what you're going to do, there's two parts here. Part one is how you got here. So step one, isolate a problem behavior that you have. So you stayed up too late last night, even though you had something really important to do. That's your problem behavior. Number two, think back to the last time you did it. I did this yesterday, so that's really easy for me. The more recent, the better. What was the immediate prompting event that caused it? So I had a very crazy Monday, and I did not have any breaks at all. So I found myself staying up and answering emails and watching TikTok at 2 a.m. Number three, what things in myself and my environment made me vulnerable to that behavior? So what you're basically doing is starting to walk back from the moment of behavior through the rest of your day to figure out all of the factors that contributed and got you to that point. List that chain of events that actually happened, and then what were the consequences? Right, so I'm tired today. I've recorded a podcast this morning. I was a little bit less on point than I like to be and didn't have like word recall the way that I wanted. That's the consequence. Part two, pave a new path. Here, you want to brainstorm some new and preferable behaviors to replace the ineffective ones. And then you're going to make a prevention plan to reduce your vulnerability in the future. So for me, this one's really easy. If I take a lunch break and I actually hold myself to that lunch break and I actually break instead of just using that time to do work, I'm a lot less likely to stay up really late doing other stuff. And then three, if it's required, depends on the situation, make a plan to repair or correct the harm that was done to yourself and others. So today, can I cut off a little bit earlier so that I can actually get my sleep schedule back on time? If your problem behavior is interpersonal, then what can you do to get forgiveness and kind of repair what got broken so that you can move forward? So that is the thing. We will list out all these steps in the newsletter.
Okay, and for that newsletter, you can go to shittylifeadvice.com. On socials, we are Shitty Life Show. We have a book club going on right now with MC. There's one more week to join. So if you would like to join us and study about MC's genius work that she's done in trauma, which is Unbroken, we will be reading the book with her every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific.
It's a 10-week course. Mm-hmm.
Yes, there are 9 more. But the first week is viewable as of today on the Google Classroom. So please check the links in the show notes, and we're so grateful to have you here. Also, you can send us snail mail at 330 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, Suite F, San Anselmo, California, 94960. And please join us next week for Trauma Bonds. That's it for today. My name is Sam Lamont. This is MC McDonald and Tracy Benjamin. We will see you next Tuesday.
Bye, friends.
Bye.